Hi, I'm Leo. Want to know more about me? Chat with me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple Messages, and Google Business Chat. Search for UBA Chat Banking and always look out for the verified tick.
For trades that will last, you need the right structure. For a business that will work, you need the right support. We know you want your craft to be around for generations, and we see all you are doing to make sure of this. We know you want to expand your business and would not mind a little help. We have created unique solutions for you. From everyday banking needs that save you time to funding your business dreams. You know your business and we support your needs. Let us help you build for tomorrow.
Recording in progress.
Open an SME account today.
Hi, I'm Leo. Want to know more about me? Chat with me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple Messages, and Google Business Chat. Search for UBA Chat Banking and always look out for the verified tick.
For trades that will last, you need the right structure. For a business that will work, you need the right support. We know you want your craft to be around for generations, and we see all you are doing to make sure of this. We know you want to expand your business and would not mind a little help. We have created unique solutions for you. From everyday banking needs that save you time to funding your business dreams. You know your business and we support your needs. Let us help you build for tomorrow. Open an SME account today.
Wow, it's time already, and I'm excited to be here. A very good afternoon to our distinguished guests, esteemed current and prospective customers, and most importantly, the vibrant SME community that forms the heartbeat of our economy. On behalf of the United Bank for Africa, it is my absolute honor to welcome you to this highly anticipated edition of the UBA Knowledge Series, a platform where businesses gain the insights they need to thrive. Why are we here? We are gathered today at this critical juncture to consider the 2024 withholding tax regulations recently implemented by the federal government. This marks a defining shift in Nigeria's fiscal policy. For SMEs, this is not just another policy update. It's actually a game changer, and it presents challenges as well as opportunities. I mean strategic opportunities for SMEs. Therefore, understanding the nuances of these regulations is not optional for SMEs. In fact, it is essential for their survival, for their growth and long-term success. And I will not be doing this alone today. I have my colleague, Susan Ame, with me, who will be going through this with me. Susan, over to you, please.
Thank you so much, Babatunde. That was a powerful introduction, and that has set the tone for the conversation we'll be having here today. At UBA, we do not see SMEs as just businesses. We see them as innovators, risk takers, and dreamers who are driving and shaping the African economy. And for over 75 years, with a presence in 24 countries, we have been putting things in place, giving them the right tools and the support to ensure that they thrive in their spaces. And that's why we're having this program where we shall be breaking down complex economic and financial policies for them to understand. We will not be doing this alone. We have with us in the studios amazing experts who will be delving into this topic and breaking it down for the viewers. We have with us in the studio Mr. Vincent Okoukoni, who is a senior manager at Andersen, and also Mr. Adeyemi, who is Adediran, I beg your pardon, who is also a manager at Andersen. Gentlemen, you're welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having us here.
Before we go into the technical questions, over to you, Mr. Adeyemi. I think earlier I called you Adeyemi, Adediran. That's his name, guys. What is withholding tax for somebody who is just starting out and doesn't know what withholding tax is? The person has been hearing withholding tax, here's withholding tax, that, and the person needs to know what is withholding tax, please.
So technically, withholding tax is an advance payment of income tax. What that means is that individuals and companies are required to pay their taxes at the end of the year. But government is saying by way of withholding tax that I can't wait till the end of the year before you pay your taxes because I have obligations. So as you are transacting with one another, I require the customer to withhold the tax and remit some of the taxes that is due to me at the end of the year. So what this whole regulation is about is that for the past few years, there have not been changes in the withholding tax mechanism and was causing some pain to companies. The government has looked at the old withholding tax regime and made some very good changes to the regulations, which is beneficial for the most part to SMEs and companies.
Oh, thank you so much for that. Mr. Vincent, over to you. So these changes, are they any critical ones that SMEs need to know or need to include in their business to help them? How critical are they?
Yeah, thank you. So I think the regulations introduce a number of changes from definition of key terms to, transactions that are supposed to be liable to withholding tax and transactions are also going to be exempt. But I think for SMEs, the key area of interest will be exemption from withholding tax deduction. Now, for SMEs, of course, if you have, if you are doing less than 25 million naira turnover in a year, what it means is that when you make a supply, whether goods or services, the customer is not required to deduct, from the payment that is due to you. And what that means is that if the customer is not deducting from your payment, you have ordinarily more cash, to run your operations. So I think that's a very positive one for SMEs if you look at the changes introduced by the regulations.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Over to you. Yeah. Could you clarify the thresholds or the exemptions under this new regulation?
Okay, so like you said, the threshold is 25 million in revenue. So you are not required to withhold from what we call a small company. A small company is defined as a company that is making 25 million per annum in revenue. But there are some conditions to it. That company needs to be registered with tax authority and have a TIN. With TIN is tax identification number. Okay. And the second condition is that the company, in the month of transaction, the amount should not be more than 2 million naira. If you multiply 2 million by 12, it's about 24 million. So the mindset is that government wants to exempt small companies making above 25 million in turnover from withholding tax obligations.
Oh, okay, so if you make something lower, it means you're not expected to remit at all?
It means that the customer is required to withhold from that transaction and remit to the government.
So what if you do something, make something
low?
then
you're exempted. You're exempted from that deduction. Okay. And like you said, you now have more money to do business. So government is trying to put more money in the pockets of SMEs so that you can have more transactions.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, how are we withholding tax?
So I would say that, and I think that's why we are having this conversation, they should familiarize themselves with the provisions of the regulations. If you look at the regulations, it says if there's a deduction, if you deduct. So SMEs, customers are not required to deduct from SMEs. But if a big company, a company that has turnover above 25 million, supplies goods and services to an SME would then have to deduct because that company is not exempted, being a big company. Now, when an SME then deducts, based on the regulations, if that company is a limited liability company, the SME is required to remit that withholding tax to the Federal Inland Revenue Service within the 21st day of the next month. But if that company is another, well, I would say a company registered with the state government, then, meaning a sole proprietorship or a partnership, that SME needs to withhold the tax and remit to the state Internal Revenue Service. So even though the companies are not, the customers are not required to withhold tax from SMEs, when SME transact business with bigger companies, they are supposed to withhold. So they need to be mindful of those timelines.
Okay, you said 21 days after. So my question is, what if they do not do it within the first 21 days? What happens? Is there a penalty? Do they get fined?
Yeah, so there are penalties attached to it. Penalty will be at 10%, and then there's interest for the period they don't remit, at CBN prevailing interest rate. So interest is attached, penalty is attached. So that's why they need to be mindful of those deadlines, and then they remit.
So the 10% is on the amount that they did not remit?
They did not.
Okay. But how about the interest?
Yeah, the interest is also on the amount they did not remit. But you see, there are some distinctions in the withholding tax with respect to the penalties. For instance, if you did not withhold at all, meaning that you paid over all the money to the company, then what the regulation says is that only an administrative penalty will apply. Now, the tax authorities will define that administrative penalty. What the government is saying, yeah, I know you did not withhold, but at the end of the year, I'm still going to collect my taxes from that big company. So I won't punish you too sternly for that, but I'll introduce an administrative penalty.
Okay. So for, let's say, how does the person get into this process? Is it cumbersome? Is it an easy process? Because sometimes you start a business and you think you've done all your due diligence, and you just meet something, you don't even know where to go to. So if the person needs to get a tax identification number, where do they go to? How do they go about it?
Okay, so I think for businesses, registration is important, and if I remember correctly, at the point where you register with the CAC, you get a TIN. There's that handshake between the CAC and the FRS to issue tax identification numbers to companies upon registration with the CAC. Then when you have a TIN, you then approach FRS. So they have different offices. So based on your turnover, the tax authority can then guide you in terms of what particular office to register with. So you do all of those registrations. You then have a record, with the tax authority. And then at the points where you then have those business transactions with the big companies, based on the withholding tax regulations, you are then required to, make a deduction on the payments due to the big companies and then remit. Just like he said, the key thing is to understand the timeline that, you should make that remittance within 21 days of making that deduction, so that you are not exposed to, interest and penalties on tax that is not even yours in the first place, because it's not your tax. You are only acting as an agent of government to collect and remit. So why should you, delay making that remittance and then incur additional penalties and interest on tax that is not even your own in the first place?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. For me, I'm just looking at it. What are the documentations and record-keeping processes that these SMEs need to strengthen for them to be compliant?
So I think, the baseline of the transaction will be the agreement between the parties. So they need to keep that. They also need to keep the invoices issued by the parties that is issuing an invoice. They need to keep that. And then they need to do some automation. If you are not doing automation, at least keep proper records to be able to identify which taxes is due to the Federal Inland Revenue and the one due to the State Internal Revenue Service. Because you can deduct and remit to the wrong agency. So that's very important. So I would say that they should familiarize themselves with the regulations, like I said earlier, and also speak to a consultant if they are in doubt. But the documents are simple, the transaction document mainly, and then they file their returns to the relevant tax authorities.
Sorry, I just want you to break down those that are due to the state and those due to the Federal Inland Revenue Service.
So if it's
kind of businesses.
Yeah, so if it's a limited liability company, it's due to the Federal Inland Revenue Service. If it's also a non-resident company, it's due to the Federal Internal Revenue Service. But if it's a sole proprietorship, if it's a partnership, it's due to the State Internal Revenue Service. If it's an individual, it's due to the State Internal Revenue Service. So simply put, limited liability companies, non-resident, is due to the federal government, which is Federal Internal Revenue Service. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. For people who are watching our SMEs and they're thinking, am I a resident? Am I a limited? Which one am I? Please, could you explain to them? Because somebody might be watching now and thinking, what kind of company am I? I don't even understand where I fall into, the category I fall into. So could you explain to them?
I think they will know, because if you register with the CAC, you have to define your legal status. You have to say what kind of company you are. And for simplicity, a limited liability company, typically you find LTD or limited at the end. But I know some companies don't even put that. But if you're in doubt as to your obligation, you can ask for the incorporation documents. So going back to his question, one of the first things you should do if you're transacting business is to properly profile the person that you're transacting business with. So can they send you their incorporation document so that you can know the kind of company they are? Once they send you the incorporation document, the CAC certificate will show whether it's a limited liability company or is a sole proprietorship. With that information, you know where to remit the taxes that you are deducting.
Okay. For everything, sometimes they say there are pros and cons. We've been talking about the pros. Are there any cons for SMEs with this new regulations from the withholding tax?
Yeah. Do you want to take that?
Yeah, when you say cons, I think going back to the basics, when you have two SMEs transacting with one another, it means that there will be no deduction whatsoever. So as the SME who's providing the service, your income is exempt from withholding tax deduction, and then because it is an SME who is also receiving that service, he also would not deduct withholding tax. But you see, businesses can decide to say, okay, I don't know if withholding tax exemption will be enough incentive to remain in that small league. Would you rather scale up and expand your business and then make more money and pay taxes than remaining a small company? I do not, for the life of me, I'm not sure businesses will choose to remain small just because of withholding tax exemption or exemption from income tax, as it were. So you need to look at that balance to say, do I really want to scale up? And if I have to pay taxes, I mean, if I look at it and say, at the end of the day, I'm going to make more money for myself, I don't mind paying something to the government. So that's maybe an issue to deal with. And then again, for SMEs generally, I know that record keeping could be a challenge because you're not so structured compared to the regular big companies. So record keeping may be a challenge in terms of enjoying that exemption. As a small company, you need to be able to demonstrate, for example, that you do not have up to 25 million turnover in a particular year. In order to do that, so for example, if I'm a small company and I've transacted business with you, ordinarily you have the obligation to deduct withholding tax when you're paying me. And then I've told you, oh, I'm a small company, don't deduct. For you to actually not deduct, I need to be able to convince you, by providing relevant documents to say, oh, I am actually a small company. Look at my sales records, look at my bank statements. I do not have up to 25 million turnover, which means you shouldn't deduct. So that's obligation to keep proper records and also prove, your status as a small company, may be a bit of a challenge for SMEs.
Okay, and you heard him. Unless you don't want to grow, but UBA, our dream, we're here to make sure that you grow. So
regulation, but I would say that the regulation is a good regulation. But I would say that the regulation is a good place to start, since when the last regulations were issued.
Okay, so from the last regulations to these ones, what are the major things that SMEs can see now and say, thank God for this new reforms?
Okay, so I think for me, what really stands out is, so like he said, withholding tax is usually an advancement of income tax. So when the customer has deducted from you and paid on your behalf to the government, you can then use that payment as a credit when you are filing your tax returns and making your payments at the end of the year. Now, one of the key introduction by the regulation is that, so before now, the challenge used to be that for me to enjoy that credit, which is the payment you made on my behalf, I needed it to have remitted to the government. So if I go to the government FIS, for example, I say, oh, Susan has remitted 100 naira on my behalf when we had this transaction 2 months ago. I want to use that credit to offset my tax. If you had not made that payment to the FIS, that means I won't have that access to that credit and I can't use it. Now, what the regulation is now saying is that I don't have to wait for you to make that remittance to the government to be able to access that credit. So at the point where you deduct, you issue a receipt to show that, oh, I have deducted X amount from payments due to me. I can then take that receipt to the government, to the FIS, and say, oh, this customer deducted X amount from my payments, and then I should have access to these credits, which I would then use to offset my tax. In the past, that wasn't possible. You needed to have remitted that amount before I could access the credit. But now, once you deduct, you give me a tax receipt, and then I take that to the FIS, and I get credit. So for me, I think that helps businesses in terms of cash flow management, because why do I have to pay cash tax from my pockets when I have tax credit ordinarily sitting with the government?
Okay, I just want to know how prepared the government, especially FRS and LRS, let's even say Lagos State, how prepared are they to disseminate this information to SMEs? We have SME all over the country. Yeah. How prepared are they?
I would say that withholding tax is not a new type of tax, as it were. So the tax authorities are familiar with the operations of withholding tax. But I think the real issue here is that have they updated their records or the way they administer taxes, to be in conformity with the regulations. A typical example is what he has said, that when a customer deducts from a supplier and the customer has not remitted that tax to the relevant tax authority, is the tax authority prepared to issue a credit for money they have not received? So that aspect needs to be clarified. And I think the regulation provides that the relevant tax authority can issue guidelines to give more clarity on how they would operate the regulations. But whatever guideline they give has to be consistent with the provisions of the regulations. So I would say that a lot needs to be done in terms of taxpayer education, guidelines need to be issued to provide some clarity to SMEs and even companies that are not SMEs. So I'd say it's still early days. This January, we expect more in this space in the coming months.
Viewers have started sending in their questions, and this one asks, it says, when my SME grows into a big company, would I have to notify the company, the government, in terms of tax deduction? So this person is trying to be honest. He's not trying to beat the system.
Well, my answer to that would be yes, and I would gladly tell you that even if you don't inform the government, I mean, there's a handshake between different government agencies, so government can actually get access to, your financial records, that clearly shows that you've crossed the threshold, and then you are required to pay taxes. But as a good citizen, like you're trying to be, I would advise that you go ahead to notify the government, and then start complying with your obligations as required.
So there are no cutting corners. You just have to do that. And then another one says that, how will the customer know my revenue band is less than 2 million monthly to be able to tell whether to withhold or not? And it's saying, in the month where they don't even make profit, in the year where they don't make profit, are they still expected to remit to the government?
So if you look at the regulations, the way it is drafted is to say if a transaction does not exceed 2 million monthly. So if a customer and a service provider are transacting and the amount is less than 2 million, the transaction is less than 2 million, and the supplier qualifies as a small company, you might as well assume that, okay, I don't have withholding tax obligation. But don't forget that government is not losing money if you don't deduct. Because at the end of the year, that company that you didn't withhold tax on will be required to pay tax if it happens not to be a small company. So there are kind of checks and balances. Government is trying to encourage businesses to transact and put in more money in the economy. But there are also checks, if you are a big company, but you've posed as a small company, or you're a small company at the time of the transaction, and at the end of the year, you then become a big company. You then need to pay your tax, and then whatever credits that might have accrued at the time you became a big company during the year will be offset against your income tax. So it's kind of fluid, but I think it's all together at the end of the day.
Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen, for the amazing conversation we've been having so far. We'll go on a short break now. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. Don't go anywhere.
Hi, I'm Leo. Want to know more about me? Chat with me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple Messages, and Google Business Chat. Search for UBA Chat Banking, and always look out for the verified tick.
For trades that will last, you need the right structure. For a business that will work, you need the right support. We know you want your craft to be around for generations, and we see all you are doing to make sure of this. We know you want to expand your business and would not mind a little help. We have created unique solutions for you. From everyday banking needs that save you time to funding your business dreams. You know your business and we support your needs. Let us help you build for tomorrow. Open an SME account today.
Like this issue?
I think the first thing is to immediately compute the shortfall and remit to the appropriate tax authority. The second thing I would say is to engage that tax authority that, oh, we made a mistake while deducting. Can you pardon us and not impose penalty and interest with respect to this amount? Now, we've seen instances that, because the government is not after your business. In many cases, they try to cooperate as well. So we've seen instances where the relevant tax authority would say, we know a mistake is possible, we'll waive the penalty and interest, especially because you have now remitted or done the right thing. It will be worse if the company does not make corrections and then wait till the government finds out. Then penalty and interest will kick in. So I would say make the appropriate correction and appeal for a waiver of penalty and interest. It's at the discretion of the tax authority to make those waivers. But that's where automation comes in, so that mistakes
thank you very much.
Are reduced.
You said I heard you when you said that earlier.
Yeah.
They need to automate.
To reduce mistakes.
Yeah, okay.
We've been talking about penalties. You talked about penalties for not remitting early. And you know, a reward system that rewards, that punishes, also need to reward. So if you do not default and you pay, can you even pay before the 21 days?
Yeah. So
are there incentives if you pay before?
So remember, the money you deducted, you are acting as an agent of government. So government is saying, when Mr. Hay transacts business with you, help me withhold my money and give it to me on the 21st day of this next month or the 30th day of the next month, depending on the nature of the transaction. So when you remit earlier, you are just giving government their money earlier.
Shouldn't there be something to encourage me to remit earlier?
Like I said, in some West African regimes, there's some incentive to say if you remit earlier, we would give you a reduced rate or something like that. So that exists. If you go to Ghana, Kenya, that exists. But I would say that this regulation is a remarkable improvement from the previous one.
No.
So maybe when government looks at how compliant the citizens are, they can say, okay, maybe we should add this more for more compliance. So I think this is where we are now, and we should work with it.
Thank you. One of our viewers also wants to know if there are any exemptions for agriculture health services, people who are in that sector.
Yes,
Vincent?
Sector specific exemptions.
Okay, so there's what we used to know as, I mean, if compared to what used to be obtainable in the old regulations, you used to have what we know as contracts of service, and we have what we know as over-the-counter purchases, still in the ordinary course of business. So for manufacturing companies, for example, or for what you know as producers, people who are at the first port of call when it comes to manufacturing or conversion of raw materials to finished goods, people in that sector enjoy some sort of exception because the margin on their profits or their profitability is very low. And then the government has said, okay, you know what, instead of, I don't want to overburden you, I don't want to put too much pressure on your cash flow because I want you to also continue to be in business. So if you are a manufacturer, you enjoy some sort of exemption when customers make purchases from you. So they don't deduct when they are about paying you, right? So manufacturers can enjoy some sort of exemption. Beyond that, what we also used to know as contract of service, now there's a reduced rate from 5% to 2%. So a typical supplier of goods or services that is not done in the ordinary course of business, will now be subject to withholding tax at 2% instead of the old 5%, which was, obtainable in the prior regime.
And just to add to that, yes, companies in the agri sector will be exempted. It's typically you are using raw materials, you are buying raw beans to produce more. So you are exempted from withholding tax. And I think there are all other transactions like supply of diesel, cooking gas, liquefied natural gas. They are also exempted. Also, airline tickets. Some government has looked at some transactions to say, okay, let me free up the tax burdens on this. Construction companies, the margins are typically very low. Used to be 5% or even 2.5% withholding tax at some point. That was reduced to 2%, especially for when it applies to buildings, bridges, and roads and power plants. But all that kind of construction, 5% applies. And I said that to say this. It's important for SMEs to look at the fine wordings of the law.
Wow.
Because if you just say construction is 2%, you may be missing it. It's only buildings, roads, and power plants.
That sounds more like
and bridges.
Infrastructural.
Yes. This is because government is saying, I'm sensitive to what's going on in that sector.
Okay.
I don't want to burden them. Let them make some money. Let them breathe, as they always say.
There are companies that remit to state and the federal government. So what umbrella do those companies fall under?
Yeah, I would say typically if your transaction or your business is robust, you have dealings with sole proprietorship, you have dealings with limited liability companies. So you have dealings with different kind of companies with different kind of legal status. So what I always say is that let them submit, profile them appropriately. When you do that, then on the system, let the system be able to recognize the different states that transactions can be remitted to and the ones that is due to the federal government. So that when the accountant is imputing the transaction, it automatically goes to the relevant tax authority. And at the end of the month, you just pull it out and pay Caesar what is due to Caesar, I think that's...
I know that there are platforms now where if you just put the registration number,
yes,
it can spool the details of that. Therefore, even in that automation, that's why we are still repeating that.
Yeah,
automation is
very important.
So for the companies that pay to the state and the federal government, is it not like double work? Is that not burden? That not a burden to them.
It's not when you automate your. So I would say that
the percentages the same.
The percentages. That's another distinction that this has made. For the most part, in the last regulation, the distinction was made between a limited liability company and a non-limited liability company. That's sole proprietorship with different percentages. But the spirit behind this regulation is saying that the distinction will be between a resident company, meaning whether it's limited liability or non-limited, the rates are largely the same. So the distinction that the government has made now is between my people and non-residents, So for non-residents, you find typically higher rates. But for residents, whether you are a company or you are a sole proprietorship, for the most part, it's the same rates. So that's one of the distinctive features of this. So
if you're paying 5% to the government, to the federal government, you're also paying 5% to the...
For the most part, for most
state
of the
government.
Yeah, for most of the transactions.
Okay. So as UBA now, how can people benefit? UBA tax, how can customers of UBA benefit, SMEs?
This is the best example. I mean, you can't say no to, or you can't. I don't think you can do too much of taxpayer education. You know, when you create awareness, when you have avenues like this to, you know, sensitize, you know, your customers on their compliance obligations or requirements, what they need to know about changes in the, you know, tax laws and policies and the legislative landscape. So I think it's a very good avenue. I mean, if I were an SME or a business owner, this would be music to my ears, because from you know, events like this, I get to understand my obligations. I get to understand what I need to do, you know, to comply with my you know, tax requirements, as well as also avoiding interest and penalty. Because I mean, as an SME, for example, I'm not a big boy. You know, I'm trying to grow my business, and then I don't want to hear anything that would, you know, mean I'm losing money by way of you know, penalties or interest on unpaid taxes. So I think this is a very good avenue for businesses to get informed and stay informed and understand their obligations.
See, I didn't want to toot our own horn. I left it to the experts to tell you. So we're giving you valuable insight here where you can use to grow your businesses.
I think another thing is the regulations provides that if a company does not have 10 tax identification number, that the rates applicable should be twice the rates specified in the regulation. And I think one of the things that the bank does is, at the point of onboarding customers, yes, I'm aware that
we ensure that
you always ensure that they have 10. So there's a lot of value in that. And I think maybe unknowing to you, you're actually helping them to comply. Because if they don't have that 10, you know, then a higher rate would apply. So I think that's one of the values.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Can customers make use of, is there any provision for staggered payments? No.
I would say that staggered payment of withholding tax.
Yes.
I would say that the regulation doesn't make provisions for staggered payments, but the withholding tax now follows the payment. Before this regulation, what the government has said is that even if you have instrumental payment transaction between each other, government is saying, say, I don't have any business with that. Just give me my withholding tax and pay. Even if you have to borrow, you account for my withholding tax on the 21st day of the first month. But now government is saying, if both of you agree that payment is going to be staggered, then I will collect my money at that point that you are making payments, which is very good. Except if you are related parties. You know, if you are the same hand or the same person. The government is saying, no. Just give me my withholding tax.
People are looking for exemptions, really. A follow-up to the question you answered earlier. Somebody wants to know what over-the-counter businesses are.
So when you hear over-the-counter, think cash and carry. I walk up to the store, I pick up some goods, and I pay cash. Right? I don't need to have a contract for that transaction to happen. Right? So I walk up to a store and don't pick up items for the office or something, and then I pay cash or I pay with my card. You know, that's a very good example. Now, there may also be instances where there's some sort of understanding. For example, if I'm a frequent customer and the supplier or the seller allows me to pay after a number of days, you know, that becomes a bit fluid, because the taxman may interpret it to say there's an implied contract, which is why they are allowing you pay after some days, credit. But then, because I do not have to have a contract, they don't probably have to issue an invoice for that transaction. I walk up and I just make the payments over the counter, you know, either with cash or with my card. There's no contract. There will typically be no obligation to deduct withholding tax.
Okay, because it was another question came in, and I think that has, but you can still answer. The person said, they are a pepper seller and they don't have tin.
They don't have tin.
They don't have tin. Now, what do they need tin for as pepper?
5 million. I mean, government is saying, go and enjoy, keep selling. But if your turnover is more than 20, then you are a big-time pepper seller. And government is saying, even though I may not have all the instruments to catch you, but you owe me money. So register. But if you're an individual and you're selling up to, say, more than 25 million, and you're not registered as a business and all that, then that income may fall under personal income tax, where you then pay about 19.2%, depending on how much you earn. So I'm saying that at some point, you just need to pay something to the government. But if you're a pepper seller below 25 million, enjoy. Above 25 million, try and regularize. You're not a big boy. Try and
I hope you've heard our experts. So if your turnover is above 25 billion, try and remit to the government. We've been having an amazing conversation here so far in the studio. Remember to keep your questions coming, and we'll go on a short break. When we continue, we'll be right here with our guests.
Hold on. Almost there. Almost there.
Was it?
Hi, I'm Leo. Want to know more about me? Chat with me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple Messages, and Google Business Chat. Search for UBA Chat Banking, and always look out for the verified tick.
For trades that will last, you need the right structure. For a business that will work, you need the right support. We know you want your craft to be around for generations, and we see all you are doing to make sure of this. We know you want to expand your business and would not mind a little help. We have created unique solutions for you. From everyday banking needs that save you time to funding your business dreams. You know your business, and we support your needs. Let us help you build for tomorrow. Open an SME account today.
Welcome back. Back to the conversation around the pepper merchant or pepper seller. I just want to say, for those transiting from the 25 million annual turnover to bigger one, we have a service. One of the services we render is the business registration platform, which we have, that assists SMEs to be able to get their businesses registered, and it comes along with that TIN registration, and it comes at a discount. It's not the regular cost that you get it outside. Therefore, we have that already for those who are transiting. I'm just looking at it. How can SMEs now use this compliance to this particular regulation as a strategic or competitive advantage to themselves, their businesses?
Yeah, I would say understand the provisions of the law first. You know, sticking to the tomato seller example, when you are selling in the market and I come to buy, it qualifies as a cross-the-counter transaction. So I'm not obligated to withhold tax. You're only obligated to pay your taxes at the end of the year. Now, with the information that we have now, if you look at the regulations, it says that when an amount is a reimbursement, then withholding tax will not be applicable. So if I transact business with you and you tell me, oh, provide me, let me say, office materials. And I say, in getting this office material, I have bought this office material on your behalf. Now, this is my commission or my service fee. Remember that the office material is yours. I only bought it on your behalf. Withholding tax will not be applicable on those office materials. It will be only applicable on my service charge. But if I come to you and I issue an invoice and I say my whole money is 1 million naira, and I don't distinguish between the reimbursement and the service charge, it will be like the whole entire amount will be liable to withholding tax. So the knowledge of that. The other thing which I mentioned earlier is understand that terms matter. When you go into a business and it's construction of building, and you just put in your software construction, you didn't say what type of construction. Construction that is not building roads attracts 5%. When it falls under building roads, power plants, and bridges, it attracts 2%. But you have just said construction. When the taxman comes, what do you think he's going to argue? He's going to say, no, I think this is not under 2%, it's under 5%.
5%.
Yeah.
So be clear in your accounting software, be clear in your documentation, so that the applicable rates will be applied to the transaction. So that would say that I know you are not in the business of, taxation, that you want to read the law, but just know the basics or consult tax consultant if you're in doubt.
Yeah, because that's a competitive advantage for you, because if this your customer that did this transaction with you goes to another SME, and through that the withholding tax happens to be 5%.
Yeah.
The next time he wouldn't patronize that.
Yes.
He just come back to you.
Exactly.
Therefore, you have that competitive advantage.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. Yeah.
If I may just add to that, sorry. So in talking about documentation and agreements, we've also seen instances where the weddings and agreements try to, move the tax burden from the supplier to the customer. So, for example, I've made a supplier worth 100 naira to him, and then he's supposed to ordinarily withhold when he's paying me my 100 naira. Let's even say 5%. So he's supposed to pay me 95 naira cash and remit 5 naira withholding tax. But then, because I do not want to pay the government that amount, by the way of agreements, I then say, oh, you know what? All tax obligations and burdens will be borne by you, the customer. So I'm not interested in whatever withholding tax or whatever tax would apply. I just want my 100 naira. So if you are going to account for withholding tax, you'll be the one to bear it, and that would mean a higher cost for the customer. So knowing, understanding the weddings and peculiarities of agreements can also help in managing.
Yeah, because the regulations frown at those kind of arrangements.
Vincent, this next question is for you. Akimbode Dikpelu is asking, he said from their understanding, they know withholding tax to be paid in advance ahead of tax liability. He said, in our climate of increasing cost of operations, most companies are making losses. He said, how can the company recoup such tax withheld from FIRS as the tax liability did not crystallize?
Okay, so this is a tax refund position. If I understand the question, it means I have made a supply, you have deducted, and you've remitted withholding tax on my behalf. When you make that remittance, I have a credit sitting with the government. So when I'm supposed to pay my income tax at the end of the year, I should be able to access that credit and use it to offset part or all of my tax liability for that year. Now, at the end of the year, by the time I then computed my tax liability, it so happens that I do not have any tax liability to pay, which means my credits, I cannot use my credit in that year. I think the first thing to note is that withholding tax credits, you can carry them in perpetuity.
Wow, that's
so
good.
It doesn't expire. There's no timeline within which you must utilize. I know the tax authority came up with some interesting development a couple of years ago and asked taxpayers to regularize the status of their withholding tax credits. Otherwise, those credits will be deemed to be used or expired. But withholding tax credits do not expire. You can carry them in perpetuity. So even if you do not have any tax to pay in a current year, you can always carry forward those taxes into subsequent years to utilize. In some very rare instances, you could, I mean, if it's obvious that, for example, if I'm a small company and then maybe someone has deducted in error on payments due to me, I think you could approach the tax authority for a refund, even though the process is not a very friendly one, because the taxman will try to convince himself as far as possible that you do not owe any other kind of tax. So if you go to the government to say, or to the taxman to say, oh, you owe me, or I want a refund of 100 naira that was deducted in error, for example, the taxman will say, oh, you mean I should give you 100 naira from what I've collected? Okay, let me come and check your record. So whatever taxes you owe or that you may owe, the taxman wants to satisfy itself that you do not owe anything at all before they pay you, they give you that refund. So it's not a very common practice, but you can always have those credits available to be used in subsequent years.
Okay. We know that this tax regulation, the reforms just came into effect last year, I think July.
First of January.
This year.
Okay, yeah, it was introduced last year, yes.
Yeah.
So how prepared are the tax authorities, you people now, the experts, how prepared are you to assist SMEs to know what they're supposed to do? Apart from what we're having here, how prepared are you people as the experts?
Well, I would say that from time to time, as a firm, we release tax alerts, which is ensuring that SMEs and other companies are abreast with the changes in the tax space. And as a responsible organization, sometimes we provide advisory services without charging them, as long as it doesn't require complex calculation. So we are willing to help when they need information or they have some doubts with respect to regulation. We are willing to assist, just like we are here today to provide certain clarification on what may concern them. So we're all partners in this because we all have a stake in this economy and we'll do our best to assist them.
So far, can you measure the level of compliance?
I would say measure level of compliance is, the tax to GDP ratio of Nigeria is about 10%. What you actually need to see tangible progress in terms of social amenities is 15%. So we're far away. And that has to do with, we just introduced digitalization, increasing the tax base without increasing compliance cost. So I think we're on a journey. I would say we are not there yet, but there's been a lot of improvement. I can see the government is now, their policy direction is to focus on, for lack of a better word, the big players in the economy and allow the SMEs, come up to speed without straining them. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'll allow Babatunde to ask final questions. And we'll say a vote of thanks for you.
Thank you very much. I don't think I have any question. This has been a very enlightening session, and I believe our viewers online, they've really gotten so much from this this session. I just want to say thank you very much. This is your second foray here, second time coming. We hope you'll be glad to join us when next we call you.
Definitely.
As subject matter experts on this platform. Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
So
is it safe to call you people regulars?
Yeah, well, we like the partnership.
Thank you so much for breaking down these policies. I believe our viewers have gained so much from this. All the areas that have been gray, you've been able to separate them, made them black and white. So if you still have questions, don't forget, put them in the comment section, and don't forget to follow us on our social media platform. Remember, we're here to ensure that all your economic and financial policies are made simpler, are broken down for you so that you can understand. Because at UBA, we are here to ensure that your businesses succeed. So until next time, when we come your way, stay blessed. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hi, I'm Leo. Want to know more about me? Chat with me on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Apple Messages, and Google Business Chat. Search for UBA Chat Banking and always look out for the verified tick.
For trades that will last, you need the right structure. For a business that will work, you need the right support. We know you want your craft to be around for generations, and we see all you are doing to make sure of this. We know you want to expand your business and would not mind a little help. We have created unique solutions for you. From everyday banking needs that save you time to funding your business dreams. You know your business and we support your needs. Let us help you build for tomorrow. Open an SME account today.